Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we are ranking the infamous Black Crusades of Abaddon the Despoiler. Ranking the 13 times the War Master has led chaos out of the Eye of Terror, from least to most impactful. Now, while over the years we've been told the events of each and every one of these Black Crusades, for many of the worlds and places devastated, we don't quite know how grand or important they were, and so we'll have to use a bit of common sense and opinion here. We know each of the Crusades was secretly aimed at destroying parts of the ancient Necron Blackstone pylon system, and that's something that's really impossible to judge. So it's the wider events and effect of the Crusades that we'll really be taking into account. And the impact could be either upon the Imperium and wider galaxy, or simply something that's furthered Abaddon in some important way. And of course, as always, this is just a bit of fun and my own personal opinion. There are no right or wrong answers here, so drop your own thoughts and rankings in the comments below as always. However, without further ado, we begin in 13th place with the 11th Black Crusade. Now for the 11th Black Crusade, Abaddon bound a Demon of Tzeentch to a vessel in the hope it would be able to guide the fleet through the warp storms surrounding the Eye of Terror, essentially hoping to bypass the Cadian Gate. And it didn't work. The demon went insane and exploded into a time and space altering vortex, which catapulted Abaddon's crusade force across the galaxy. And to his credit, Abaddon made the most of his situation, assaulting the nearest Imperial system of Reloria, which handily contained a cardinal world. However, it also led Abaddon straight into the path of an Orc war, led by the war boss Murgor Undredteeth. And so the biggest takeaway of this particular crusade is the thousands of Orc captives Abaddon took back to the Eye of Terror, to experiment on their psychic power and connection to the warp. It may have helped him in some way, and surely did, but the failure to navigate a path out of the Eye, and then ending up fighting Orcs more than the Imperium, for me this has to rank at the bottom of all of Abaddon's Grand Crusades. However, moving on, in 12th, I have the second Black Crusade. Here, Abaddon returned from the Eye at the head of a vast fleet of traitors. However, this time, thanks to the first Black Crusade, the Imperium was ready. The Cadian Gate had been hugely fortified by the Imperium in the years following the first Black Crusade, and it was well on its way to becoming the most fortified place in the entire galaxy, if it wasn't already there. Abaddon's armada smashed into the Cadian system with everything it had. He managed to destroy the shipyards upon Bellis Corona, and invoke a curse that would plague its populace for generations to come. He assaulted an inquisitorial fortress on Nemesis Tessera, freeing powerful demons, and the Word-Bearers used Abaddon's campaign as a distraction to elicit their own campaign upon the Imperium. However, ultimately, as much as Abaddon raged and ravaged, Cadia held firm. The Imperium had learnt from Sigismund's sacrifice in the First Crusade, and they were prepared. This was the beginning of the formidable stand that Cadia would make for the next several millennia. Sure, Abaddon destroyed needed pylons here, as in each and every crusade, but he was pretty much held in check, and surprised by the vast defences the Imperium had waiting. the Second Crusade for me simply can't go any higher. Next, I have the 10th Black Crusade and the assault upon Medusa. Now, the 10th Crusade is notable as it's the first time Abaddon appears to truly work in cooperation with one of the traitor Primarchs, proving that those animosities could indeed be put aside. And for that itself, I did consider ranking this one higher, as it's an important milestone. Here, Abaddon bartered a deal with Perturabo, who agreed to open a secret warp route out of the Eye of Terror in exchange for Abaddon's assistance in assaulting Medusa, the homeworld of the Iron Hands chapter. Together, Abaddon and Perturabo decimated the Medusa system, completely annihilating several of its outer worlds entirely. However, they couldn't destroy the Iron Hands chapter themselves, who, in the true image of their Primarch, weathered everything that was thrown at them, until Imperial reinforcements eventually arrived. So, despite their losses, Medusa and the Iron Hands ultimately still stood. Meaning for me, it's only really the successful cooperation with a Primarch that keeps this crusade here, and stops it from dropping any lower. A tricky one to place, that's for sure. However, moving on to the top 10, in 10th, I have the 9th Black Crusade, and the starving of Cancephalus. Here, Abaddon destroyed the Imperium's vital naval fortress of the aforementioned world of Cancephalus, causing a huge blow to the Imperium. It was a loss that left the Imperium reeling, and enabled the traitor forces almost free reign throughout the sector for almost the next 20 years, during which time 2 Space Marine chapters were completely destroyed, and the Lamenters chapter was pushed to the brink of survival. And on top of this, 2 fleets escaped the Eye of Terror to unknown destinations. So who knows if or when that factor of Abaddon's grand plan could come to fruition. So all in all, the 9th Crusade caused a lot of destruction and mayhem across the Imperium. Maybe I've done this one a little injustice in not placing it any higher. I certainly wouldn't argue against it if you did. However, moving on, next I have the 6th Black Crusade. Now, this one isn't renowned for its wide-ranging destruction, but it was a big step in Abaddon's progression. Here, Abaddon allied with a rival warband leader, Drekarth the Sightless, who commanded a powerful force of former Sons of Horus himself, known as the Sons of the Eye. Together, they assaulted the Forge World of Arc Reef, and were victorious. However, it's in the aftermath of that victory that is the most important, as Abaddon betrayed Drekarth during the celebration, and would claim the Sons of the Eye warband for himself, going a long way to reforging the entirety of the one-time Sons of Horus Legion beneath his banner. And that, for me, is why the 6th Crusade deserve its place here. Not as grand as many of the other Black Crusades spoken of here, but a very, very important one for Abaddon's power. Now up to 8th place, I have the 4th Black Crusade, the devastation of Elfenor. This Black Crusade was launched to destroy the Grand Citadel of Cromarch, which was an important piece of the Cadian Gate's defences. And well, that's exactly what Abaddon managed to do. It's short, it's sweet, it's straight to the point. and in weakening a key piece of the Cadian Gate's defences, wiping out the line of Cromarch rulers, and of course those vital Blackstone pillars along the way, Abaddon was laying the groundwork for the Gate's ultimate fall later. So it's not the flashiest, but it is a very important instalment of the line of Abaddon's crusades. And it's one that was definitely more successful than the earlier Second Crusade, that was also largely contained to the Gate itself. But moving on to 7th place, I have the Third Black Crusade, with the desecration of St. Gerstal's tomb. Here, Abaddon sent the demon prince Talamin at the head of a vast fleet upon Cadia. Accompanied by the demonic legions, Talamin slaughtered millions of people, before being stopped by the Space Wolf chapter. But it all in truth was a mere distraction, to enable Abaddon to slip past and assault the Ecclesiarchy shrine world of Gerstal, making sure the prophesied rise of the saint herself did not take place. That might not sound as devastating as some of the crusades we've already mentioned. However, for me, we have seen how powerful and important the Emperor's saints are. The effect they have on the people, the defenders of the Imperium, again and again, turning defeats into victory, emboldening the faith of the Imperium. And we know how key that goes on to be, with the rise and ascension of the God Emperor. Abaddon stalling the rise of the Saint for as long as he could is a huge victory for him, and so for me, it rightly deserves its place here. But moving on, next in 6th place, I have the 5th Crusade, the Tide of Blood. Here in the 5th Black Crusade, Abaddon would ravage the Elysia sector, targeting holy imperial cities and ecclesiarchy sites strategically. The population of Cassia Lutean would be sacrificed in a bloodbath, tearing the demons of Khorne into the physical plane, led by the feared demon prince known as Doombreed. The hordes of the Blood God would obliterate 2 entire Space Marine chapters, and countless thousands of loyal Imperial defenders, ultimately only being stopped by the arrival of the Blood Angels chapter. This one was an undoubted massacre, clearly Abaddon's intent to target the faith of the Imperium, maybe realising now how potent that threat was beginning to be. The Imperium ultimately won, but it could hardly be called a victory. However, up next, into the top 5, I have the 7th Black Crusade and the fall of the Blood Angels chapter. This crusade was known as the Ghost War, as the emerging fleets poured from the Eye of Terror and burst past Cadia, before completely disappearing. Over the next several years, a flood of terror would engulf the neighbouring sectors, never knowing where the chaos attack was going to come. Yes, the expected destruction followed, but the definitive event is undoubtedly the battle upon the world of Makan, where the entire Blood Angels chapter found and engaged the War Master himself. Vastly outnumbered by the swelling numbers of the Black Legion, the Blood Angels chapter was virtually annihilated to a man, with Abaddon vindictively seeking to erase the sons of Sanguinius forever by mutilating their corpses, ruining most of the chapter's gene seed, and stealing the rest. Only the corpses of the Blood Angels Death Company were not mutilated, instead honoured for the final stand they made. Now perhaps the destruction of a single chapter doesn't warrant such a high position to you. However, Abaddon here came within a whisker of eliminating the legacy of the Blood Angels forever. The Blood Angels, the Space Marine chapter known across the Imperium, the sons of Sanguinius himself. Think of the monumental blow to the Imperium that would be. Think of the catastrophic effect that would have had. Not simply to the morale, but to the practical too. No future Dante, no defeat of Leviathan, no Warden of Imperium Nihilus for Guilliman to appoint, not to mention the countless other victories over time. If the Blood Angels chapter had been truly erased here, not allowed to rebuild, it's no understatement to say the Imperium would be very different indeed. That alone makes this one deserve its rank for me. Now on to 4th, I have the 8th Black Crusade, and Abaddon gaining the favour of Tzeentch. This crusade followed the similar pattern of destruction and mayhem, unleashing carnage across Segmentum Obscurus. However, it was all in truth enacted to a very specific order and precision to please and honour the god Tzeentch. Worlds, cities, forge worlds, populations, all of them fell and were massacred to an exact order and number. A galactic-wide effort by the Despoiler to ensure the Changer of Ways was behind him. And just think about the sheer calculation and planning that this took by Abaddon to pull off. Unbelievably difficult and impressive. And it all enabled him to get the commitment from not only one of the 4, one of arguably the most powerful, but also for me the most untrustworthy one, in Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways. This was a hugely important Black Crusade in Abaddon's grand plan, and credit where credit's due, he pulled it off to a T. But now into the top 3. In 3rd, I have the 12th Black Crusade, the Gothic War. This one unleashed devastation on a scale that made even other Black Crusades pale in comparison. Hundreds of planets invaded, billions of souls slain, 4 out of 6 Blackstone fortresses destroyed, but with Abaddon leaving with the last 2. This was the prelude to the fall of Cadia, and Abaddon set the stage brilliantly. It was a warning the Imperium in truth failed to heed, for as much as they reinforced Cadia after, this Black Crusade should have really taught them it simply wasn't enough. You could argue the Gothic War deserves to be higher here, and honestly I wouldn't necessarily disagree. However, in 2nd place, I have the 1st Black Crusade, the Long War Ignited. This was the traitors' re-emergence into the galaxy, and it was the jewel of jewels, as Abaddon finally faced Sigismund. Sigismund alone had known that Abaddon would return, and he alone was ready and waiting. Though vastly outgunned and outnumbered, Sigismund faced his old friend. And though aged and slowed, with Abaddon still in his prime, Sigismund still managed to plunge his sword through Abaddon's chest, pushing Abaddon the closest he has ever been to death. Honestly, were it not for Abaddon's Terminator plate, I think it's a given that he would have fallen to Sigismund here. For this moment alone, it deserves a high ranking. However, for being Abaddon's declaration of war, and the crusade he acquired the sword Drachnien, the Godslayer, there's no way I can place this one any lower. It's the one that began it all. And of course that leaves the 13th Black Crusade as the number one. The crusade that saw Abaddon break the gates, destroy Cadia, flood the galaxy with the warp. Fully half the galaxy would be cut off from the Emperor's light, and chaos would now stalk the galaxy like never before. Even the days of the heresy didn't see the demons freed so easily, with the very gods making their impact known. The Imperial Palace itself saw a chaos assault, as demons walked the throne world for the first time since the siege itself. This crusade was the biggest defeat in the Imperium's history, and it's not even close. The very galaxy teetered upon extinction, and half of it still does. How can this not be number one? It changed the very universe as we know it. And so, as always everyone, what do you think? Do you agree with my rankings of the Black Crusades of Abaddon? Or do you disagree? What would your rankings of the infamous Black Crusades be? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.